everybody. Welcome. I am Carrie Robb. I'm the author events coordinator for St. Louis County Library, and I am thrilled to be hosting tonight's live virtual author interview with best-selling Western suspense author and one of our all-time favorite library guests, CJ Box. So hi, Chuck. Welcome back to St. Louis, sort of.
Hi, Carrie. It's great to see you. This is odd doing this. I'd much rather see you in person and the people in St. Louis. But thank you, and I'm very glad you're doing this. So thank you. That I think my luck will continue as long as we keep doing this.
Oh, well, thank you. And we're so proud to still be able to host you. So I want to start just by thanking our wonderful partners at HEC Media who are helping us with all of our virtual author events, as well as our indie bookstore partner, Left Bank Books, St. Louis's premier and oldest independent bookstore. Left Bank has exclusive signed book plates for Chuck's books for any book that you order of Chuck's through them. And you can order by following the link in the Facebook live stream or by visiting left-bank.com. And we really appreciate your supporting our authors and our indie bookstore partner with your purchase tonight. Well, just to introduce quickly, I'm sure most of your fans out there know exactly who you are, but the library has been honored to host CJ Box for pretty much every year for the past 8 or 9 years. And while I'm really sorry we're not doing this in person tonight, it's just always a thrill to introduce one of my all-time favorite guests. So if any of you people out there have been to our in-person events, you know that I make it a mission to try to embarrass Chuck with my adoration before every event. So Chuck's just such a wonderful, wonderful guest. He's such a great storyteller, warm person, and we just love him so much. Chuck is, of course, the #1 New York Times bestselling author of 21 Mysteries, starring Wyoming game warden Joe Pickett. And these books have sold more than 10 million copies in the U.S. alone. Chuck is also the author of the popular Cassie Duel series and several award-winning standalone novels. So tonight, Chuck joins us to share the newest Joe Pickett thriller, Dark Sky. So Chuck, congrats on Joe's 21st adventure, or misadventure is probably more accurate.
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much. I am missing this because it has worked out over the years that my favorite tour stop every year is the St. Louis Library. Aww. And anybody who asks me that, even other bookstores, I tell them that. So it's kind of sad not to be there, but hopefully it's just this year. Yeah. But anyway, thank you very much. Yeah, I never thought there would be 21 books in this series. I always say that I never thought there would be a book 2, but it's worked out. And this one I'm particularly happy with for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, just in case there's anyone out there watching who's new to your books, do you want to start us off just by telling us who is Joe Pickett?
Sure. Joe Pickett is a Wyoming game warden, which means he's a state employee. He works for the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. And in real life, there's only 50 of them. And in the books, Joe is, I think now his badge number is up to 22, 23. They do it by seniority. So he's been at this for a long time. The thing that's so unique about game wardens in Wyoming is that they not only enforce the game and fish laws and regulations, hunting and fishing, but because the population in the state's so sparse, they get involved with all sorts of things legitimately in real life. Kidnappings, hostage situations, sometimes murder investigations. So it's pretty wide open. And Joe Pickett has a territory district. It's 5,000 square miles in the Bighorn Mountains. A lot of things have happened over the course of 21 books, of course, but basically, and he's aging in real time. So those who have followed the series know that he dotes on his daughters and his wife, and his oldest daughter, Sheridan, in the very first book is 7 years old. And a lot of the book is told from her point of view. And in the current book, Dark Sky, she has graduated from college. And although a lot of people thought she'd be following her father's footsteps, she's actually working for Nate Romanowski, Joe's best pal, outlaw falconer, maniac. And she's his apprentice falconry in a legitimate bird abatement business. So that's how it all starts out. It's kind of hard to encapsulate all of that, but that Joe Pickett is a very kind of he's an average Joe. Doesn't beat up everybody. He's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. He can't outshoot anybody, but he does tend to get himself into situations that are unique, and that probably his unique attribute is he's very dogged. He'll follow it through no matter what, even though sometimes a situation a smarter person would bail out.
Right. One of my favorite memories from all of our events, but from one of your past events, is when probably about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a young man who came through your signing line, and he was wearing his new Game Warden, I guess, Academy shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And he had just started the Game Warden education program, and he'd been inspired to do that because of his longtime fan of your books. And I thought that was just such a wonderful moment.
It was. I love that. And I love the fact that, readers range from young boys and sometimes young girls to husbands and wives to sometimes fathers and daughters. That's one great thing about the in-person events is you get to meet your readers. And I had been telling my publishers for years that I thought the readership was like 50-50 men and women. And they couldn't quite believe that, because generally for mystery novels, more women read them, thrillers, more men read them. And I kept saying it's half and half, I'll tell you. And they finally did a focus group study when the books got a little bigger, and found out it was in fact 50-50 men and women reading them. And it was never strategic to plan it that way. I don't know how you do that, but I'm really thrilled that that's happened, and that there's a lot of boys who can't find books that they like, outdoor kids,
Mm-hmm.
and they really embrace these books, which I really like.
Yeah, that's good. So Dark Sky, in this book, the governor asked Joe to take a tech billionaire elk hunting. And this guy is sort of like a Mark Zuckerberg, kind of a wannabe Steve Jobs type. He actually calls himself Steve 2, which I thought was hilarious. And things, of course, go really quickly wrong. So this idea, is this something that billionaires are coming to Wyoming to do, to have this sort of authentic wilderness experience?
Yes. I think it's accelerated during the pandemic. We've seen some very strange things in our states with the little town that I live in, for example, does not have a single house for sale. Wow. Because everything has been purchased over the phone by people trying to flee other places. But there's a lot of that. And actually the idea for Steve 2 came from an article I read a couple of years ago, where another high-tech billionaire was going to go have lunch with Zuckerberg. And for that particular year, Zuckerberg was procuring all of his own food. He does a different thing every year. He learned Mandarin Chinese one year. He does different. And for 1 year, he was growing his own food. And in this story, Mark Zuckerberg went out to his backyard and killed a goat so they could eat lunch. And I thought, that's so interesting. Here's a guy who lives in such a bubble that actually, killing and eating his own food is strange to him, that he wants to experience it. That's kind of where the character came from.
Yeah. So many of your books kind of tackle a social issue, which I have always been impressed how you handle that without being heavy-handed at all. And then, of course, as a game warden, many of Joe's cases have dealt with environmental issues. Mm-hmm. But at the heart of this book are really issues of social media censorship and internet trolling. Why do you want to take on this sort of tech-based issue with this book?
Well, I do feel very prescient with this book, because a lot of the issues that are brought up in it with cancel culture and censorship on tech, and as well as the trolling and humiliation of people on it by anonymous people, is all something that's really in the news right now. But the book was actually finished last May. So I kind of think, it's very appropriate for today. But a lot of it is things I've heard my daughters talking about in regard to people being shamed for simply posting something on the internet. People shaming my daughters with their grandkids, and how hurtful that can be, and how it can maybe drive people on the ground crazy.
So Joe takes these people up into the mountains You cover that? Okay. And they're truly clueless. I think there's one scene where he gives them some bear spray,
Yes.
and he's telling them what to do with the bear spray, and they're just looking at it, trying to figure out, like, which way do I point it?
Yeah.
Um, Pointing it right at their faces. And I would certainly be that clueless too. And now these people are dealing with the cold, wildlife, difficult terrain, and of course, bad guys chasing them. So, if I was stranded in the Wyoming wilderness, what is going to be the biggest threat?
Oh, wow. I mean, certainly the wild animals and weather. Um, you know, in real life, I mean, um, I just came from there. I'm at my daughter's house in Iowa, but we've had some pretty severe winter storms, and I always think about that. It is extreme. The weather's always extreme. The conditions are extreme. Um, it's not Bambi kind of nature at all. There's grizzly bears, there's mountain lions. There's some wolves now in our area, a coyote certainly. Um, and I like to think I could survive, but not with people hunting me. I don't think so. But that's the thing about this book that was so much fun to write, with the juxtaposition between the super high tech, always online, post every day kind of entourage, going into the mountains on horseback, and suddenly the circumstances result that it doesn't take one day, and when they're out with no communication, no weapons, no transportation. It's basically a wilderness survival tale, with Joe Pickett kind of stripped down to the studs, trying to escape with his life and save a guy with other people after him. So it's such a switch between this super high tech everything and then absolute basic wilderness survival skills, all within 24 hours.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely a page turner. You're just wondering, like, how are they possibly getting it out of this mess? Um, so when I read your books, I'm always really stunned by your descriptions of Wyoming. I've never been there, but whenever I read your books, I do really just feel totally transported to this place, and they always feel so fresh too. So I'm assuming you take great inspiration from the nature around you. Do you ever worry that you're going to run out of descriptions, ways to describe?
I don't, and I love that photo, because that is basically the view from my front porch of my little ranch. Is a river valley and then the mountains going up. Just looks just like that. I don't ever worry about running out. I've learned a long time ago not to overdo the descriptions, to basically do it with the point of view of trying to put the reader in that place and then move on. Elmore Leonard wrote this great thing a few years ago, before he died, the Elmore Leonard's 10 Rules of Writing. And his number one rule was leave out the part readers skip, meaning huge blocks of descriptive text. A reader will skip right over them to the first line of dialogue, because they don't really miss anything that way. And I'm always cognizant of that. So whenever I do the kind of description, the nature stuff, I want it to be accurate. I want people to know what it's like to be there, what the light is like, what it smells like, how cold it is, and then move on. So when I do a lot of description, I go back later and take out everything that's not necessary. It's not about, I always think it's not about me writing, it's about the reader putting themselves in that place.
Yeah, good. Um, well, one thing that I thought was really interesting with Dark Sky, the book's actually set after the pandemic. It's set just a little bit in the future, which I thought was just a genius way of dealing with this mess of a situation. How did you come up with that idea?
You know what? I have to credit my editors on that one, because when I wrote the book, it was last May, and I'm the eternal optimist. I thought this whole thing was going to be over by August. So I wrote the book with the pandemic totally in the past. And when I finally submitted it, and there was like 3 or 4 lines in there, they said, "I don't think you should be so definitive that it's over." well, why don't you just leave it a little more open-ended? And I'm certainly glad they made that suggestion, and I'm certainly glad that's how it came out. But
Yeah.
so there's a reference to the fact that it has happened, but not that it's definitively over, but that everybody has gone through this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, well, as we've discussed in the past, and like I think many, many, many of your fans, I have a bit of a crush on Nate's longtime partner, sidekick, anti-hero, Nate Romanowski, who we talked about just briefly at the start. So you want to tell us what's going on with Nate in this book?
Yes, Nate. There have been some big changes in Nate's life. He's gotten married. He has a new little baby. He's learning the difference between different kinds of Pampers that he's supposed to buy at the store.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to go straight and settle down, but what happens is he is encroached upon. He finds out that somebody, kind of a younger version of Nate Romanowski, but more ruthless, has moved into his area. He's stealing his birds. He's taking the falcon eggs, and then he starts to threaten his family. And Nate has to kind of start to revert into the old Nate just to basically save himself and his family. So it's I love the new Nate, and it's still the old Nate is still there, but I love the fact that he's fallen in love with his little baby girl.
Yeah, that's nice. So I noticed that Nate and Joe are in almost no scenes together in this book. Not until the very end do they have scenes together, but their close connection is still so much a part of the story. I was really amused because in the very early part of the book, Joe picks up a map and he makes a joke about this map. And then about 200 pages later, Nate picks up a similar map and makes the same joke. I thought that was just a great way to tie their connection together.
Good, thank you. I appreciate that. I like that. You're the only one that's kind of mentioned that, so I like that. Thank you, Carrie.
And it looks like after this book, we're kind of set up for a Nate focused book. Is that correct?
That is correct. That was one thing we just talked about, that most of the books are set a year apart, but the next book will begin the next day after Dark Sky concludes.
Yeah.
And I've got that book practically done. I'm so far ahead on things because I'm not traveling. And the next book is quite exciting. I'm really, really into it.
Do you have a title for it yet?
Well, we're debating. We have two titles that we're arguing about, so I don't have a definitive title yet.
Okay. And we talked about Sheridan briefly at the start too. Joe's daughter Sheridan, and she has a pretty big role in this book. She's really kind of coming into her own as a character, as Nate's assistant or apprentice. Is there possibly a book just focused on Sheridan coming in the future?
Well, you know what I like to do with all the books is focused on different character, on the family and the girls. The next book, which is just about done, is very much a Mary Beth book, which hasn't happened yet. So, celebration of librarians and all the things they do. But she gets into a situation that Joe tries to solve that is very unique, but based on a real story.
Yeah. I like that she had some sort of like librarian sleuthing going on in this book too. I like to see that world come up.
Me too, because in smaller communities, I mean, certainly in St. Louis, thanks to you guys, but I noticed like in a lot of smaller communities, rural communities, like where I live, libraries are almost like a community center. It's sort of morphed from, of course, the books are always there, but have turned into more community centers in a lot of places and are very important in small communities, not just because of the books, but because it's a central place. And I try to put that in the next book, that the structure of and value of libraries is important but changing.
Good. Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to get to the audience questions in just a second. But before we get to that, I did want to talk about TV. So the fans have been waiting for this for such a long time, but you recently served as executive producer for ABC's Big Sky, which is based on the Cassie Duell books. And then there's an option for the Joe Pickett series too. What's that like for that finally to come through, for this all to be on the screen?
The Joe Pickett one, this is such a weird situation. I cannot make an official announcement because I pledged to the producers that I won't step on their official announcement, which they keep telling me is going to come every week. But it's definitely in development. I'm really excited the way it's headed. Um, they're hiring, or they just cast Joe Pickett, and I couldn't be more thrilled, but I can't tell you who it is, unfortunately. But I'm really excited about that one. And so for both those series, I'm an official executive producer. But that really means I provide the source material and I consult, but not on a day-to-day basis at all. I don't want to. I do know that both series are going book by book through the series, which for an author is the most thrilling thing in the world, is that they're actually going to go through it in a long form way. And the one thing that I was always hoping, if it ever happened, has happened, and that is it's driven more readers to the books.
That's great.
The Cassie Dual books, the sales are up 20 times from a year ago. So it's all working. It's great, and it's so important to work with really good people. And this is the first time I've had the opportunity to do that. I've worked with some bad people in the past who had optioned the books or had all these ideas for them. But I finally feel really comfortable that I trust all these folks.
Good. Well, I have to say it's going to be hard for me to watch anyone else in Joe's role, because when I read the books, I just picture you.
No, you need
really
somebody much younger and skinnier.
Okay. Well, I always do. I just like, there goes Chuck. He's going to wreck that truck too. And
Oh, thank you.
All right. So we're going to get to some audience questions. I'm trying to do this with my phone. So let's see. So Debbie wants to know, the town of Saddle String is central to every book. Do you have the layout all in your head, or have you made a map to keep all the locations straight, like the bar, burger partner, library, sheriff's office, etc.?
Yeah, the town of Saddle String, in my mind, is fictional to start out. And it's a combination of three different towns in Wyoming. Sheridan, Wyoming, Buffalo, Wyoming, and Saratoga, Wyoming. And the downtown and the river is all from Saratoga, which is the nearest town to where our ranch is. But I use other parts of Buffalo and Sheridan. And I'm always feel like I made the right decision to make it a fictional place, because then I can manipulate it. I can say things are different places. I don't have to tie myself to an actual community. And but in my mind, it's a combination of those three places, located more in the mountains at a place. The location is a place called Story, Wyoming, which is real. So that's, in my mind, that's how it's all laid out.
Great. Okay, so Judy would like to know, will there be more Cassie Dual books in the series? Are you going to write more Cassie books?
There are. As soon as I'm done with the next Joe Pickett book, I'm going to start on the next Cassie Dual book. I'm actually over a year ahead because I've had so much time to write. And, a good illustration of my brilliant business sense is I had asked the publishers to give me an extra year for the Cassie Dual book, not knowing that there's going to be a television show called Big Sky on the air. So I'm a little behind the eight ball on that one. They want another book. Everybody wants another book. But because I'm ahead of the game, I'm going to be able to produce one actually a year before it's supposed to come out. So,
well, you're well known for your how many books you can put out a year. I mean, you used to have a 1,000 word a day writing process. Do you still have that? Have you been able to keep that up?
I do. Yeah, I do. And but the great thing last summer and this summer is I was so far ahead. I had the book done. I was able to do guilt-free fly fishing and guilt-free golf all summer long, and I really do like that. That's terrific to be able to do. That's why I wanted the extra year on the Cassie Dual book. But now I feel compelled that I better get going on it because there's a lot of people waiting for it.
Yeah, good. Well, it's exciting. Let's see, what do we got here? So will your publishers allow you to publish book 22 this year, or do you have to wait until March of 2022?
I think I heard that. Would the publisher allow what?
Will the publishers allow you to publish book 22 this year, or do you have to wait until March 2022? I guess she's asking if you're.
They really like doing doing the books every year on an annual basis, kind of in the same month. That's it's a pretty well-oiled machine with the way the major publishers do different series, and they really like the kind of March release every year. People start to count on that a little bit. I assume that the next Joe Pickett book will be out next March. I'd be surprised if they'll have it, but I'm surprised they would do it any earlier than that.
Yeah. Usually you have, and one comes out in paperback when the other one comes out in hardcover.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I know that you always have great book recommendations for us. You always come up with some great books that I don't expect. What have you been reading? Have you been reading much over the pandemic?
I have. I have talked to some of my good author buddies, and I won't mention any names. Some people have been paralyzed for 11 months. They can't read, they can't write. I don't get that, because there's no more solitary job in the world that's not affected by other people than writing. So I've been just writing and reading and having the time of my life. I joke that, in Wyoming, especially where I live, the toughest part of the pandemic is trying to find somebody to social distance with. It's difficult, sometimes. But no, a couple of the books I can think of that I have read recently and love. It's last year's book, but there's a book by Stephen Weedlin, and he's got two Sioux Indian names in between. Wombly, I'm going to screw it up. It's called Winter Counts. It's a debut novel. It's an insider view. It's a mystery thriller. It's insider view of growing up on the Sioux Reservation in South Dakota. And I love this book. The one I'm reading right now that I also love, I'm a huge fan of Denise Mina, the Scottish mystery writer. Her last book is called The Less Dead. I'm about 3 chapters away from the end. It's fantastic. I can't recommend her enough. And also over this pandemic, I've read every book that Adrian McKinty ever wrote, the Irish author. I love him. So those are ones I would recommend.
Yeah, somebody else was recommending the Adrian McKenzie to me recently. I'll have to check that out. I love Irish.
So Irish, Scottish, and American Indian. That's what I've been doing.
Good. Well, if there are any more questions, feel free to send them in. I've got a few more that I can ask. One question, I don't know if we covered this while I disappeared for a little bit, but I was wondering, just thinking about Joe aging in real time with your books. And there's a point in this book where Sheridan looks at him and says that he looked like he was much older. What's next for Joe? I mean, do you see him moving towards retire? Like, where do you see this going in the future?
Yeah, and we did talk a little bit about that.
Did you? Okay.
Basically, I don't think that far ahead. The books are they're told in real time. He's 51. The next book he'll still be 51. But I assume the next one after that, he'll age another year. There will be a point where it makes no sense to have, a 65-year-old game warden out doing things. And there'll be a point where I'm older than Joe, that I will not want to keep doing this too. But that's a long ways off, and I don't even think about it.
Well, 51 is not at all old in any way. Just he keeps getting shot and wrecking trucks,
and some things happen in this book. He goes through the ringer in this one. But he's pretty resilient, if nothing else.
Yeah. All right, we have another question here. It says, you sold your tour company. Is your tour company still thriving?
Oh, man. It was an international tourism company. Worked for 5 state governments to promote international tourism to the Rocky Mountains. The guy who bought it, poor guy. I mean, it still is alive, but there has been no international tourism in 11 months. Not a single person. But my understanding is the company survived. They got the PPP money. They're ready to go as soon as international travelers can come again. And so it will continue on. I'm happy to say.
Good. Well, I've always thought that would be such a fun way to see that part of the world, is to do one of these kind of, I guess the fishing expedition would be more my speed.
It is a bit. It's always good to do something. People always, especially Americans, shy away from organized tours because they think they can do it themselves. But it's always more rewarding to go with people who know what they're talking about. So I mean, that has nothing to do with books, but go on an organized tour. They're great.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to share with us before we sign off?
Nothing I can think of other than next year. Let's do this in person, okay,
Definitely.
Carrie?
Yes. Yes. I miss seeing you in person. I'm sure our readers definitely miss just getting to chat with you for a minute and shake your hand and get their books signed. Again, you can get the signed book plates to go in the book, so you can still get your annual signed Chuck books. And that's through Left Bank Books. That's left-bank.com. And thanks everybody for joining us. I'm sorry for the for blipping out there for a bit. I guess we have to roll with the punches with this virtual format. But Chuck, it's just been so nice to talk to you again.
It's great to talk to you. Great to see you. This was fun. Thank you. And thanks for everybody tuning in.
Thank you.